The absentee African American father is a myth. Don't believe the hype. There are African American men who have always been in the lives of their children, grandchildren, extended family members, and friends.
Welcome to the Empowerment Zone with Ramona Houston, where we zone in on Black and Brown relations and our journey to empowering our communities.
Fatherhood has been central to the lives of many African American men. Are you interested in learning more about fatherhood? My guest and I are talking about how to be a wonderful father. We explore all types of topics. What does it require to be a good father? What are the characteristics of great fathers? How have our fathers influenced us and shaped our lives? Our society and communities tend to focus on mothers, but Marlon and I are centering our conversation on fatherhood. Marlon Addison is joining the Empowerment Zone for the second time. He is a proud husband and father of three. Hi, Marlon. Welcome back to the Empowerment Zone.
Hi, Ramona. Thanks for having me. Glad to be back.
Man, I am excited about having you, particularly with the topic that we're discussing today, which is fatherhood.
Yes.
Yes, from talking to you previously, I know you are one of those individuals who are really devoted to your family and your role as a father.
100%.
So in order that our audience can get to know you, I know they probably listened to that great episode about emotional intelligence, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And as I told you, I was actually reading the book when you and I had that discussion. But can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you do professionally? Just give us some background.
Sure. So I give them a snippet. I like to say, and I mention this a lot, and I do it on purpose. Tell people who I am first. I'm, God-fearing. I'm faithful, faith-driven. Of course, I am a dad. I am a husband. Those are the things that help define Marlon. That's who I am professionally. I'm a sales executive. That's what I do. Love sales. Love it. And I think when we talk about emotional intelligence, like we did in the first episode, I think that's the basis of selling, right? Knowing where a person is or persons, how to negotiate, how to bargain, and how to set that stage and that tone to get further and solve a work-related problem. So in essence, I'm a sales executive, and any form, shape, fashion, sales, I love it. Truly. So that's me.
So I like the way you described yourself, who I am, I am being a spiritual component, right? I am that I am. And saying who you are as a person before you get into the professional part. A lot of times we end up defining ourselves up on what we do and not who we are.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I try to make a habit of doing that. And again, we're talking about it, we can get into it, but my dad taught me that, my mom as well. But my dad and I are super close, super tight. So a lot of what he taught me rubs off. So I find myself doing that out of a positive habit, I call it, right? Just saying who I am, what I stand for, and you could agree, you could disagree, that's fine. Doesn't impact me because that's still who I am. So I like to define that first, and then we can get into the other particulars.
So I'm curious, do you do that in professional settings as well?
I do for the most part. It may be sometimes, depending on the audience, but by and large, I kind of start with that. This is who I am. This is who you're going to get. This is who you'll see on my social media. This is what you see is what you get, point blank with me. So that portion, it is what it is. Or as my wife's grandfather used to say, it is what it TIS.
So let's talk about fatherhood. What is your concept of fatherhood, and what are the origins of your concept, and tell us about fatherhood.
I was like my superhero backdrop, my origin story. So it starts with my dad and obviously his dad before him. So with my dad, I have it's a total of 5 of us, right? I have 3 sisters and a brother, and I fall toward the end. I'm the youngest boy, right? And then my little sister came along and stole the cell, but that's another story. So with my parents, my dad he did break the mold. So just giving you a little backdrop, my grandfather is no longer with us. That was my man too. But, he had other families, right? So while he raised my dad and his siblings, immediate siblings, he had others. And I start there because I was 12 years old when I met my other cousins, my first cousins. My grandfather fathered 2 other boys that we know of, 2 other young men and a girl, a young lady. So we met them, and I mentioned that because of fatherhood. My dad and my uncles and my aunt connected, and they sought each other out, and they found each other when I was 12 years old. And my cousins and I have been super close, super tight then. So I start there because that was not my first example of fatherhood by any stretch of the imagination, because I was 12 at that time. However, that was huge. That was a milestone, a marker for me, because my dad and my mom, and I'll talk about my mom too and how that fits into fatherhood. And my dad did that along with my uncles, my Uncle Frank, my Uncle Richard. And then we just connected from there. And it's been such a beautiful addition to the family. They were already there, but for us getting to know them, getting to meet them, getting to find out more about ourselves. And they did that in a time where that wasn't the norm. So we're talking about in the 80s. So I'll pause there, but that was, just a big milestone of fatherhood for me.
So what made it a milestone for you in the concept of fatherhood?
So you're talking, I was 12 and I was in the 7th grade. And in the area where I originally come from, Jersey City, New Jersey, is a rough area. A lot of abandonment, a lot of fatherlessness, also some fathers. I want to stress that there are fathers there, several, but there was the other side of it too. So to have my dad highlight that for me, it was a milestone in relation to what he had already accomplished. So when I say that, I mean, in addition to that milestone, he was known as the spades player in the neighborhood, right? He's a minister. And it was frowned upon, especially, again, you're talking about in the 80s and then you're getting into the early 90s. It was frowned upon for, men of the cloth to play cards, right? So he didn't gamble, but he played cards to bring other men and young men and young women from the neighborhood into the home, to mentor them, to sponsor them, to give them some faith droplets, as I call them. And we just had a good time playing in there. And then, to have my mom co-sign that and be willing to put up with whatever came with that, right? The negative comments from the neighborhood, the negative comments from the congregation, right? Just being perfectly candid, the pushback, but they didn't care. They pushed forward because their goal was helping out the neighborhood. Like it sounds, normal now, but it was not, right? It was not. I think it always should be, but it wasn't. And he pushed forth with that. And again, he had, gang cats in the house, drug dealers, same people that Jesus sat with, right? That Jesus ate with, that Jesus professed to. He did that. So my dad was different in that he lived it. He wasn't a big talker that way. He actually lived it. We had people stay with us for weeks on end. So I witnessed that firsthand. So again, when I met going back to my uncles and my aunts and my cousins, that was a milestone because he just continued it. And I didn't think it'd get any better than that. And he just kept showing me how much you can do when you really care and just set it forth. So that's why.
Makes sense. I mean, if you're really embrace the teachings of Jesus Christ for those who do, you have to meet people where they are, right? Meet the people where they are, you know, and so many times people in the Christian faith tend to be more judgmental. Correct. And more closed-minded, if you will. Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah. And to hear how your father embraced people in the community, as well as embraced members of his family that were of another mother, that's commendable, you know, because a lot of that's commendable. My father is similarities there as well. My father and mother also opened their homes to people, and you know, you know, and anytime it could be somebody living with us, and and I remember one time my siblings and I. They used to always have my great, you know, my family, but they lived to be very old. And they used to always have my great aunts coming in and living with us. And then when they would live with us, they would die, you know, with us. Right. And so, you know, my siblings and I were like, you know, why everybody want to come and die with us? You know, why we get them and then they die? You know, we're in elementary school, right? We couldn't figure it out. And my mom sat us down and explained to us, we have a happy family and a happy environment. And older people want to live their final moments where they are happy. Yep. Now, that's just an example of the elders coming to our home and live, but there were all kinds of people in our home all the time. So to your point, so that's extremely
so much to the point where, again, I'm being candid, and I tell my students as well, is the difference between being candid and honest. Honest is, right, we're having this conversation. Candid is, you and I both went to a concert and I'm like, oh, Dr. Ramona, I loved it. That was awesome. Mm-hmm. And you're like, it was all right. That's candid. Mm-hmm. But the honesty is, we both went to the concert. So just being candid, sometimes my siblings and I resented it. It was like, if somebody else come back in this house, your mom, dad, like, you know, just being young and going through, you know, puberty and just young adulthood and so on and so forth. I appreciated it. I appreciated some of it then, but by far, getting older and gathering more wisdom, I so much appreciate it, so much more now, you know. But there were times where I really resented it, like, you know, get out of my house. So you know, let's be real then. Let's be candid. You know, we had a challenge with it too. We had a 3-bedroom home, of course, with 4 of us. 2 were in one room and 2 were in the other. When we would have people to live with us, that meant all 4 of us were in the same bedroom and 2 of us had to share beds. And, you know, we didn't always want to do that. Exactly. But my parents were like, we make adjustments for others. And now I can truly say I can look at my siblings, and they're so embracing of others. They're so helpful and empathetic to others. And then we look at some of our friends and other family members who are not. And that was instilled in us through not just saying, but doing, you know? Right. So thank you for sharing that about your father embracing others. Now, when you talked about your grandfather teaching you about fatherhood and bringing this other family in, what did you learn from that? So my father brought them in. Okay. So learning from my grandfather, which, you know, that was the man. He was a cool dude. So with my grandfather, I'll share this. He had a stroke when I was about 14, 15. And, you know, we have a host of cousins. And he and I were really close, and he was close to several grandkids. However, he and I had a special bond. So I went to stay with them, and at this time they were literally right down the block from my parents and I. However, I stayed down there for about 2 years off and on, and it taught me a lot because my grandfather like became totally dependent on me. Right, my grandmother was there, but I would lift him up, put him in the bed, take him wherever he wanted to go, take him to the bathroom, make sure he and I had privacy and his dignity when we went to the bathroom, and just whatever it was. And I didn't realize it at the time. Although the circumstances were dire, I had a ball bonding with him. I had a ball. So he was a Chicago White Sox fan. And when they finally, broke the baseball curse and won the series, I was so happy. I'm a Yankees fan, so let's get that straight. But I was super happy because of my grandfather, because we would watch baseball countless hours on end and just talk and play checkers. And it got to the point where my dad and I still joke about it. My dad came down a few times, and well, more than a few times, but on some occasions, he came down to help my grandfather out, and he was like, "Nah, that's all right. Where's my grandson?" So my father was like, "That's it, Dad. I'm not going to drop you. I got you." He's like, "Nah, go get my grandson." So that bond was, and that time was great. Again, although it was dire, and then he ended up passing not too long after. However, I really enjoyed that time. So that was a reflection of fatherhood and what my dad taught me, what my grandfather taught him. Despite, my grandfather playing the field, he still was there for his other kids. So he in that way, my grandfather kind of brought that to the forefront for me, and it was great bonding with him. And my dad, of course, still appreciates that, and I appreciate him for being a light and a guiding light for that. So it's just great. I even reached out to my dad today because on this very day, my aunt, his sister, Barbara, passed on this day last year. So I reached out to him, and my cousin Dane, who's my aunt Barbara's son, and one of my role models. And Dane was a Marine. Well, once a Marine, always a Marine. So that's so I reached out to them just to connect. But again, that's just fatherhood, right? Putting others first and just checking on people. So I'll pause there. But when you asked about my grandfather, that's what came to mind.
Yeah, when you were telling me that story, it reminded me so much of my sister Rhonda, who's a year younger than I am. She took care of my grandfather too, and he, he'd only want her around, right? And so my daddy, when he got sick, my daddy passed 3 years ago, and when he got ill, he didn't even want my mama. He wanted Rhonda to take care of him. You hear me?
Wait, did Rhonda throw that in your face? Did Rhonda throw that in your face?
No, she did. She just do her, she just
she's a mediator.
Yeah.
If it was your younger sister, she would have got you.
Yeah. She would have went in, right? But not Rhonda. So one time Daddy told me, he said, that Rhonda, she's a hellified nurse. That's what he called her. And so, and my mom was like, sometimes I feel kind of bad because he don't want me to take care of, he want Rhonda to take care. But to your point, you develop a bond,
right?
With people you take care of, and in that bond, they teach you so many other things, and so I'm sure you learned a lot from your grandfather about fatherhood. Now, going with your how you approach fatherhood with your children, what are some of your I don't want to say it like this.
My approaches.
Yeah. Approaches, rules. I didn't want to say rules, but what is your approach to fatherhood?
That's fine. That's fine. So I have, just for your audience to know, my wife and I have 3 children. So my oldest, Najira Ife Renee, she's 24. Then Micah Raquel, she's 21, and then Marlon Part 2, right? M2. I call it M squared. So, and he's 13. So my style is, so how it started with my firstborn, we had what was called business nights. So something, my wife and I developed, and Jira was about, I want to say 2, no older than 3. And I used to meet with her twice a week, like Tuesday and Thursday, just like a business setting. We would sit down for 20 to 30 minutes. And she was locked in, and I would teach her about, and it sounds, kind of strange, but at that time I taught her about credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
Taught her about well, checks are almost a thing of the past, but by the
Mm-hmm.
time she got to third and fourth grade, she was writing her own checks for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you know what the checks are? Just write it
Mm-hmm.
out and I'll sign it. You know what to do. So she had that going. And we would talk about, just the some political commentary I would talk to her about, age
Mm-hmm.
appropriate. I had her watching certain shows like Our World, Black Enterprise, just different things to set her up. A lot of shows about women, empowering women. And I just kept that going to Micah, and then now to Marlon. But it started with Nigeria. We would call it business nights. And I remember when she was doing, it was like a little news show for school. So they were doing the morning announcements and all of that. So I made sure how she enunciated her words and, everything. So that was cool. And she enjoyed that. I enjoyed it. My wife enjoyed it. So that was one of the methods I used, called business nights. And we were have an agenda every night. We wouldn't just meet just to meet. We were there. And of course, I love all my children. I would read to them every night, which that was a main practice for me. I find that, and statistically, this is valid as well, reading to your children every night or whatever time frame you do really helps them grow and think more and become more critical thinkers, which is important. So that's what I wanted to do what I want to do with the children. But Jira is 24 now, so she's grown. But yeah, that's how it started.
I love that idea about business nights. My parents were also big on financial literacy as well. And one of my first memories actually is with my mom going to the credit union. And from very beginning, they gave us an allowance. We got $2 a week or $2 a month, something like that.
Like
and yeah, it was something like that. It was $2. All I remember is the $2. And I tell you, what they were saying is, you have your own money, so you're going to have to learn how to budget and use your money on what you want. And I had to be 4 or 5-ish, when it began.
I loved it.
And so one of my first memories was going to the credit union, and my mom said, whatever money you make, you always have to save something. And so going and giving my $1 to the lady at the counter and saying, I want to put this in my savings account. And we had the book, like a checkbook, the register, right? And we had to put it and all of that, like what you were saying. You know how to write checks. We had our little book and we had to add it up to see how much was in our account.
Nice.
And I just remember the ladies just like, they were just so intrigued, and I just couldn't, and you could feel it. And as a child, I was like, why are they so excited? Like, why are they so intrigued by this moment? I could never figure it out. And so as an adult now, I know it's because they were like, wow, they're learning very young about financial literacy. Of course, we learned about check writing, like you said. And another thing they taught us they were big on is tithing. But they had a different concept of tithing, that when you tithe, it didn't necessarily always have to go to the church. It could go to the needy.
Like that.
Go to the needy, go to organizations that do well, do good in the community. That was their concept. But to your point, is parents taking the time to actually teach those important factors of life, and financial literacy is one of them, and reading is another. We had a library card since we were 5, and she would read. My mom would read to us, and we would go to the reading. They'd have a day for children that you go and listen to reading that at the library. But we had cards very early. But to your point, parents have to be engaged in that. Now, my father, his thing, biggest lesson, one of the lessons, I shouldn't say biggest, is not distinguishing between the males and the females. My brother had to wash dishes and we had to mow the grass. Okay, get out there and mow that grass. But go ahead. What other concepts what other
so I'm
concepts
still
do you have on?
laughing at the stories, and I'm laughing. I'm thinking about some of your audience, your listeners. I know some of them are our age and a little older, so they get it. But the ones that are not, hearing library cards and the different forms for the bank, not e-banking or e-checking. So, but some of the other things are that I got from my dad with reading, particularly. He made us read an hour a day.
Yep.
And my older sister and I, Charlene, we enjoyed reading, but sometimes I just was like, every day. But he made sure he was on it. He was on it. So, and he made us read a dictionary every day. And you know what? I've never stopped doing that.
Isn't that something?
Dictionary on my phone, and I read several words a day. I find myself like not feeling coherent if I can't. Like, what's my word today? Like, I got to do it because it's been instilled, it's been ingrained in me. So I find myself still doing that. So I had my children do the same. And also this year, my son and I, M Squared, we took on a book challenge we did to read 50 books this year. And we failed, but we got to about 30. I gotta look at my list, 30, like 33 or 35.
I was gonna say you probably, if your goal was 50, you probably got close to 50. So that's great. 30 something books for the year.
So we'll get it. We'll get it next year. We kind of slipped toward the end, but we'll get it. But I enjoyed it because I found that I found how he liked to learn. He and I both love listening to books. We love the audiobooks. We also, read them old school as well, but we've gone through so many books, and I was reading so many 12 and 13-year-old books, and I just got lost in imagination. So it was so fun having those moments with him and discussing the books along the way, discussing the books as we ended them, and just taking notes on them. So it was just such a like a special time. So I enjoyed that. So that was another one. And then with Micah's our theater person. So I'm going to give your audience a little breakdown. Nigeria is athlete, right? She was an athletic, and also a science person. So next May, she'll be Dr. Addison. So she'll be.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. She'll have her doctorate in physical therapy. So she'll be, from a clinical aspect, she'll be Dr. Addison. That's her thing, right? She used to read biology books for fun. I said, "Good, not that was her calling." So we just we pushed her. We found whatever their lane was. We pushed them in that lane, because I think where folks make an error is that sometimes we cast our net too wide. Whatever, if you find out what your children's lanes are, it can be plural. That lane or those lanes will take them wherever they need to go, because that's their calling. So
I want to piggyback on that point. When I remember, it was when I was in graduate school in Texas, and one of my friends in the church that I was attending, he and I had this conversation about the Bible verse, bring up a child the way he or she should go, and he or she will not depart far from it.
Yeah.
But he said that which the interpretation in the Black church is that's about discipline, and getting a hold of your children when they're out of line. That's most Black folks' interpretation of that scripture, right?
It is.
But his interpretation was about gifts, what you're talking about. Bring up a child the way they should go, so that they will not depart far from it. That when you identify a child's gifts, you push them in that way, in that direction. And that's what you're saying you did. What that your philosophy is, that when you identify what the gifts are, let's move them toward those gifts.
Yeah. And we were fortunate enough to find out early. So Nigeria's was science. I was trying to push her toward law and English, and which was my majors, and she was doing it. And then she came to me, I think freshman and sophomore year, said, "Dad, I really love science. I really love biology." I said, "All right." I joked around with her, and then she just went full steam ahead, and she tore that thing up. And in addition to that, that rigorous schedule, she was a Division II athlete, basketball player. And then Micah, my second princess, she's the theater person. So I have a science person, I have a theater person, the arts, and her whole room is decked out Broadway style.
Wow.
Drip down from the ceilings. Her name is in lights. That's her thing. So she just, we posted it on LinkedIn as well. She did a Shakespearean play, Pericles, and she was one of the leads, Marina. So she just did a fantastic job in that.
Wow.
She's done Hamilton with a local theater troupe in Thea, Faith in Action. She's done The Lion King. She's done Motown.
Wow.
She's done, so much. And that's just, I've never seen someone light up a stage so much and her face light up in and of itself. Like I said, yeah, that's her. So we pushed her. And it was with Micah, it was so awe-inspiring because she is such an introvert, not a regular introvert. She's a super introvert. On the stage, you would never know. But when she's done, she's done. But when she's on that stage singing, acting, and dancing, that's her world. So we push it that way. Marlon, I don't know where he is yet. He's a mix between the two because he animates, he draws, he's really into science, and he also acts. So who knows where he's going to land. So, but I'm going to push him wherever he wants to go.
That's good. That's good. And it's really interesting to hear that you have the athlete, the artist, and the scientist in the family. So we'll see what
Exactly.
M squared comes up with.
He got his work cut out.
Yes, yes.
His sisters stay on him though. They stay on him.
So I'm sure you're present, very present when your children have activities.
Oh, without question. That's one of the reasons why I took a sales job. Well, because sales was an accident for me. And once I got into it, I said, man, I really love this. So it afforded me the flexibility. So the games, I was up and down all through New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania for my daughter's collegiate years, for high school years, up and down from Micah's plays, and my son runs track. So he's an All-American, became an All-American early this year in Florida. He runs mid-distance. So he runs the 800, 1500, and the 3000, and he medaled in the 3000. So, yeah. So whenever they have an event, my wife and I are there.
And that's what's so important about parenting and fatherhood is being there and being present with your children. I know my father, well, my parents, both of my parents, but my father was extremely present. In fact, he used to tell us, I didn't understand really then, but now I understand. He was an administrator and he had opportunities for promotion. And he said he was not going to take it because he wanted to be present for his children. And that if he took those opportunities, he wouldn't be able to because it wouldn't provide him the flexibility. And I remember a lot of people always teasing me about my father being present, but now I look at it more as envy, probably, than what they were before. But my father was a PTA president, and people, that was in the 70s, right? When that was a woman's world, and people used to always come up to, he was a PTA president. He was a Girl Scout leader. And people were like, what is your father doing being a Girl Scout leader? And all these things. And
that's right.
Yeah. And in junior high, I remember my first junior high dance. That's when you think you're doing something, right? You're in junior high. I was 13 and I was going, and he wanted to go. And I was so embarrassed. He came, we took a picture together. Now it's like one of my favorite pictures of us, but at first
you were mortified
I was like,
at the time.
Yeah, my father's gorgeous. And my friends were teasing me, but now I understand. He was saying, I am here. I'm always going to be here for you. And even as a professional, he attended every conference I invited him to, no matter where it was. He would be at professional conferences. And I remember
he helped you become Dr.
Yeah. And I remember going to one conference. It was NALEO, National Association of Latino Elected Officials, and people would pass by in the lobby, and they would say, "Hey, Cecil," and I was like, "Honey, you already met everybody." So anyway, that, you talking about being present for your children,
Yep.
going to the theater, going to the games, like you said, all over New Jersey, New York area,
Everywhere.
and being present for your children is the most important
Critical.
thing about fatherhood.
That's critical.
So if you could leave our audience with some calls to action on becoming, for those who want to be a good father, what would you give them? Or even those who want to become a better father, or those who don't have children but want to be a surrogate father, what kind of advice would you give them?
So let me first say, if you are a dad or, uncle, whatever, god dad, sponsor, mentor, I love it. God bless you. Continue to do it. I love that. That's awesome. So let me first say that. Secondarily, to get very specific, I would offer, if you're a dad, here's a technique that I do. So we have jobs and we have performance plans, right? So oftentimes I find that we don't do that at home. We'll have performance plans at work, but not at home. And we don't check in, we don't follow up. So my wife, myself, my 3 kids, we have goals every year that we meet. I try not to go over 5. It's usually between 3 to 5 goals. It can be something as simple as getting your driver's license, whatever age. It could be, helping out more with the elderly. It can be working at a soup kitchen. It can be getting your grades up. It can be, with my oldest daughter, she's traveling now with her clinical, so she's in Texas. It can be to get a residency, whatever it is, right, pertaining to your situation. I would say set goals, not just in the traditional sense, but set goals in a performance plan. Write them down. Doesn't have to be fancy. It can be in bullet form, right? 3 to 5 goals. Sit down with your children. Hey, this is what I would like to accomplish. This is the time frame I would like to accomplish it in. Okay. Usually, it's for the year, and you check in with them monthly or bi-monthly to make sure they're on the right track. Or you can say, you know what, this goal isn't working. Let's tweak it or change it. So I would say take the performance plan like you do at work, same template, bring it home, to your children, to your spouse, and see how that works for you. So I would offer that.
That's a great idea for all you fathers, grandfathers, great grandfathers, uncles, community advocates, to set goals with the children or the young people, or even the older people that you're fathering, and set goals and deadlines to achieve them. Marlon is
Exactly.
advising for a year. That would be a great way to connect and interact with your loved ones. Marlon has talked about how fortunate he was to have his grandfather and his father in his life, and you see what he has become. I know I've been fortunate, man. My daddy used to always say, y'all are so blessed because both your maternal and paternal grandparents. So, I grew up with my grandfather. Both of my grandfathers passed when I was in college. So I had them most of my life, and my husband's grandfather was also very present in his life. So I got to know him. So it's just so important that we, embrace fatherhood, as we always have in the African American and Latino communities. And it's great to have Marlon Addison to show us the way.
Appreciate it. I appreciate so much for the time, for having me. And let me just say, for my mom, because I know she'll listen to her father, Bo, right? I call him Mr. Bo. He was a Chevy dude, and I got a Chevy truck because I love Chevy. The name of my truck is Mr. Bo. So
I love it.
Fatherhood in all fashions, even down to vehicles.
Yes,
so I'll say that. Yep.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Now we've reached our college strategies portion of our interview. And Marlon, can you tell us what school or schools did you attend? What were your majors or majors, your degree or degrees? And then what strategy would you give students to ensure that they are successful in college?
Sure. So I did my undergraduate work at Uppsala College, which was located in East Orange, New Jersey. I was the last graduating class, actually. So the records went to Felician University. So you'll see on my records now Felician, but I attended Uppsala College. I did my master work at William Paterson University of New Jersey, and that degree is in sales leadership and business. And my undergrad was in English and pre-law. So I also teach at William Paterson University now. So I'm an adjunct there. So what I would specifically advise is something that I teach on now. I teach on negotiation, bargaining, and emotional intelligence. I would definitely advise, and I'm talking to my professors now, when we teach a class, I would say, let's govern how we lecture. And what I mean by governing how we lecture is try to incorporate more class participation, more role plays, more technology, whether it be videos, whether it be audio books, and reviewing them and getting them to be more participatory. I find that that works well. And I did a review and a survey for my classes, and they love that style. So I would say when we're lecturing, try to mix that up a bit and incorporate the videos, incorporate the audio books again, and let it be participatory. And I also recorded them doing sales pitches because that's what I teach. So just getting out there and also prompting them to use LinkedIn more as they're going to, I'm partial to LinkedIn, but whatever tool they need, but just encouraging them to get out there more, not just social media as it stands like Twitter and Facebook, but more business social media. So that's what I would recommend.
Love that advice. I, as a former college professor, I totally agree with you about using different methods of learning. Everybody, or teaching, using different methods of teaching, because everybody learns differently. And when you combine all those different methodologies and techniques, that more students get more out of your class, as well as the participation aspect of the class. When you engage them in having oral presentations, group study, group projects, class discussion, all of those participatory factors really lend itself to the learning process. So thank you so much, Prof. We appreciate that advice, and looking forward to having you back again on the Empowerment Zone. Thank you so much, Marlon and Addison.
Yep.
A special thank you to the incredible team of the Empowerment Zone. Terry Gully, theme song, NADWorks, digital support, and of course, our featured guest.
If you enjoyed my podcast, please subscribe. We are on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Be sure to rate us on Apple Podcasts too. Thank you for your continued support.